guys, it's Sparrow, and today I'm going to be reacting to Silent Ponyville, Chapter 5, MLP Fanfic reading, Grimdark by the Lost Narrator. Okay, so, as you all saw in the last chapter, it really did a number on me. But, let's hope that this chapter just keeps pushing that kind of effect into me. So, I've got the internet shut off on my tablet, so you're not going to be hearing Skype notifications going off for 5 freaking seconds. And for those who are enjoying my Something Sweet to Bite reactions, those are all recorded, and they will be up probably within October. So, anyways, let's just get started, and 3, 2, 1, go. Really intrigued what happens in this episode, or this chapter. Okay, so while this plays over, guys, everything for Month of Macabre is now complete. And as you saw, if you are a subscriber on the channel, you've probably seen Inkie's poem, which, if you guys don't know who Inkie is, he is my OC, and he's got a pretty compelling backstory. I don't know, maybe I'll do a video on his backstory and all that crap, but I don't know. Where is this chapter gonna go? I have no freaking clue. Also, I joined a new group called QVP, which is Calling Voice Productions, and yeah, really awesome people in that group. So, yeah, I really appreciate, sorry, I can't think of her name right now, and Melody for letting me join that. So, yeah, let's just step into Silent Ponyville and see what the heck is gonna happen to poor Fluttershy. Clearing into Grimdark, it can't be good. So, let's enjoy the fun. Here we go. Okay, same notification. Like the music. Ow.
Only by putting all of her weight onto it was Fluttershy able to snap the end of the mop handle.
Oh, I thought that was a
just
bone.
The right size she needed. She gripped it tightly in her mouth, breathing heavily through her nose. She was reeling. Her body was fighting her decision, but it was one she had already chosen to make. She carefully looked back into the mirror. Her body was starting to shake. She carefully raised a hoof, her body screaming out as it touched a tender spot. She bit down harder on the stick. Her breath was stirring into a panicked breath. The health drink had numbed some of the pain, but it couldn't numb this. She had one shot to do this right, and she had to watch to make sure she did it right. She couldn't close her eyes. Her heart was throbbing in her throat. She could hear every fast and deep breath she took, her hoof positioning itself just correctly. She readied herself as best as she could, and then in one swift motion, she moved her hoof.
Oh.
Fluttershy screamed into the broom handle like she had never screamed before. The pain was instant and intense, like red-hot knives piercing the back of her mind. Her body collapsed once more as fresh tears poured from her eye. She panted heavily, laying there as she tried to recover from the pain.
What is
she
going
lay there
on?
Twitching as her wing throbbed constantly now, in more pain than it had ever been before. She forced herself to stand up, to look at it in the mirror.
That sounds so wrong.
She had to make sure she had snapped it back into place correctly. Through one eye, she carefully looked at the wing. Despite it being covered in blood, hurting like she had never felt pain before, she could see that the wing was in the correct shape she needed it to be. She managed to snap it back correctly.
Oh, God.
She prayed that it would be enough to keep it usable once it finished healing.
Well, starting off strong
she laid
already.
down onto her back and held the injured wing straight as she possibly could. Only having one hoof to mend her wound was a pain, but she could work around it. She carefully placed the stick onto the wing to keep it straight, hoping that it would also
so she's
help
creating
to
like
make sure that her
a
wing healed. She carefully grabbed the bandages.
It's the thing that doctors use when they're trying to position a broken bone. Can't remember what it's called. A slink or slant, something like that.
She'd finished taking care of her wounds. She panted heavily.
I'm sure doing
as she carefully
those
picked herself
noises
up,
in the raw
looking
recording
back into the mirror
was
to see
pretty
everything she had
awkward.
done. Her face was half covered now, wrapped in bandages so only her good eye was visible. Her hoof was bandaged and now raised into a sling that had been carefully tied around her neck, just below her lantern so that they could both fit around her neck. Her body had been rewrapped for the third time now, as well as to make sure that the first wounds that she had received were healing well. And finally, her wing was wrapped into a makeshift cast that she had managed to get to lay flat against her body.
Dang.
She sighed at the state her
She
body
was smart in this freaking
She had a hard
fic.
time believing that this was real, but there was no doubting the pain she felt.
If Rainbow Dash and Pinkie are hurt, could they take care of their wounds?
Fluttershy frowned, looking at herself.
I don't think so.
Rainbow Dash is reckless.
Yep.
She's also strong. She might be alright. She could fight back against the monsters here. But Pinkie Pie?
She shook her head.
No. Pinkie Pie's done this before. As hard as that is to believe, she'll be fine too. Both my friends are fine.
She smiled to herself in the mirror, trying
Stay
to force
positive,
herself to be
Fluttershy.
reassured,
Stay positive.
but it wasn't working well. She frowned again before looking away at herself.
I hope they are.
She turned to look at her surroundings. She had wound up in the bathroom after the lift ride, though it seemed the effects of the drenched, rotting world had been left behind.
Wait
for
a minute.
moment. The bathroom looked like it had fallen into disuse,
This
but nowhere near
is
the
reminding me of
levels as the
Origins as
hospital
well.
had.
Because
She had
in
found a mop in the
Origins,
corner
there's
of
a
the room,
demented
though it looked
portal
like it
that
hadn't
you
been
use
used
to
in
go
ages.
between like the
It
demented
was
world
time for her
and
to
the
leave
real
home.
world.
She had to go find her
Even though
friends.
Silentville
She
or
carefully slipped the saddlebag
Silent
back onto
Hill
her back
is a
and carefully coordinated
puzzle
her 3
itself.
hooves, walking out of the bathroom. She walked out into the cool breeze, wincing a little as the cold air bit against her freshly bandaged wounds. She looked out as best as she could to see where she was, but it seemed that the night had fallen, shrouding the world in a veil of darkness.
Has it really been half a day?
She hadn't felt that much time passed, but maybe because of her condition, she was having difficulty with being a good judge of time.
That's
She carefully
because
turned the lantern
it's a puzzle
on and then illuminated the path
that
before
focuses
her.
on you.
There was a dirt road before her, wide at first, but narrowing into the forest. She looked around, noticing the building that she had walked out of. She knew where she was. It was the boathouse that sat on the edge of Crystal Lake, just outside of Ponyville. That meant she was only a short walk away from it.
Crystal Lake.
She could be there in just a minute or two.
Hold on, Rainbow Dash. Pinkie Pie, I'm coming for you.
Fluttershy said determined.
I actually remember that
before
line in the
moving as quickly
bloopers.
as she could down the path to Ponyville. She was having trouble coordinating 3 hooves correctly, especially with trying to trot into town. She was wobbly on her legs, most likely a side effect of not having rested enough, but she kept moving forward. Her determination to see her friends was the strongest factor driving her mind right now. Twigs in the forest snapped. Strange noises.
Is she in the
crept
Everfree
through the
Forest now?
leaves. She swore she could hear soft wails in the distance.
That don't sound good.
She forced her mind off of those sounds. She had to move past them, move to Ponyville. The path began to open up before her, the dirt path quickly being replaced by the stone streets of Ponyville.
Crystal Lake.
The streets
Is that
spreading
canon
apart
to
as she saw
Ponyville?
the first signs of homes
don't think
in
so.
Ponyville. She smiled to herself as she returned, happy to be back in a place that seemed more normal than where she had been the last day and a half.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Her music
That's
box
not good.
began to hiss, stopping her in her tracks.
Where's the dragon?
Oh no, they're here too?
Fluttershy gulped as she looked into the night, trying to see what was causing her music box to hiss. Sliding into view on the ground before her came a creature. It seemed to be the basic shape of a pony.
These look
but
like
this
slugs or
creature seemed to be
something like
no
that.
older than a filly reaching marehood. Its body was completely hairless. The skin on the creature looking as if it had been deeply bruised all over.
Oh, Jesus.
Many parts of the skin dead or dying, with other parts seeming fresh and healthy in comparison. Its ears were folded down, melded with its own face as such a way to cover its own eyes. Its long legs pushed its body against the ground, its front hooves seemed to be strapped down to its back, as if tied
Got
down
that
with
sound
its own
effect.
skin, melding it with its own body.
Yep, it's
As the
exactly what I
creature
think. These
crawled
things kind of
around,
look like
it let out
slugs.
a
I don't know what they're
strange
called
screeching
though.
Cry, not unlike
They're one of the
that
monsters you come
rusting
across
metal
in the
grinding.
games.
Unpleasant to the ears, yet a sad, wailing cry. Fluttershy gulped as the creature seemed to push itself all over the place, unable to move in a straight line. Her instinct was to feel sympathy for the creature.
Nope,
Her gut told her that the creature should be pitied, that it needed to be helped.
No.
Then the image of the dark creature appeared in her mind.
Yes.
She carefully stepped around, slowly getting away from the creature, before running deeper into town. As she slipped away from the creature, her music box finally began to go silent.
Yep.
She panted softly, looking over her shoulder to the direction that she had left the creature.
Ooh, that
It
music.
didn't seem able to follow her, considering it didn't seem capable of moving in a straight line. She let out a soft sigh, grateful that she could avoid the creature. She really only had enough bandages left to wrap one more wound at best, and she didn't seem to know when she would need it. She carefully began to look around, trying to focus on the buildings around her. She blinked her eyes to gain focus more. If she knew where she was in Ponyville, she could navigate her way around. She carefully moved her head to look around, careful not to harm her injuries, as a blur moved across her vision.
Huh?
She said, quickly turning her head back at the blur. In the distance, as if glowing white like an angel, was the image of a young filly. Fluttershy stared at the filly,
Herself?
not sure what to say or if to speak up. She wasn't sure if it was real or not, but it was a filly just standing in the middle of nowhere. The filly let out a giggle before
That
turning
freaking sound like the
around
Candy
and
Mare.
running away from Fluttershy.
Hey! Wait!
No. Stay away.
Fluttershy cried out, her instincts acting to quickly chase after the filly.
Come back! You shouldn't be alone.
Oh,
If the filly could
Fluttershy.
hear Fluttershy, she didn't seem to be listening. She just continued to run, turning down a street. Fluttershy followed as quickly as she could, but she was slow and stumbling now. She cursed herself for having become so injured when she needed to help an innocent foal right now.
Fluttershy cursing, huh?
Her music
See?
box hissed. From the darkness crawled another one of the monsters that pushed itself along the ground. Fluttershy ran past it, making sure to avoid even touching the creature.
Yep.
Her
It's
whole
just
body
run,
was telling her that
run,
she
run.
had to catch up with this filly. The filly turned down another street, and Fluttershy followed as best as she could.
I'm trying to think
nearly
if this is
toppling
referring
over
to
as
the
she slowed
games or
herself down
not.
with her 3 hooves.
I don't know if it is or not.
She quickly paced down the street when 2 more monsters burst forth from the darkness,
Oh,
causing
shit.
her music box to wail. These 2 monsters seemed to be heading straight for her, with no time for her to move out of the way. She gulped before quickly jumping. The 2 creatures wriggled their way past her as she landed behind them. She
Golly.
thanked Celestia for having avoided them before returning her sights to the filly. The filly had made one last turn, not down a street, but into a house. Fluttershy felt grateful that the filly had gone inside, but she still had to make sure that the little filly would be all right. Fluttershy quickly drew closer to the house, looking it over before gasping. The house was in terrible condition.
Oh,
It didn't look like it
goodness.
had been used in years. The windows were boarded, the walls were black, holes littered its frame. A gentle breeze caused it to groan very slightly.
Fire?
Fluttershy stopped. A bad feeling washed over Fluttershy. However, the filly had gone inside of the house. She couldn't leave the poor thing alone. She very carefully walked up to the door and pushed it open, her lantern illuminating its insides. The door opened up to a decrepit living room. The furniture had long been consumed by insects.
Oh
The table laid
gosh.
in pieces on the ground. Most of the doors were sealed off with wooden planks, and the floor was covered with a thick layer of dust. Fluttershy slowly walked into the house. Her very footstep made the house creak and groan, as if struggling to hold up her weight. She looked around the living room. Every doorway on the floor that she was on was completely sealed. There would be no way for her to get through any of them. On top of that, she couldn't see a single sign that the filly had entered the house. She turned her attention to the stairs, the only path that hadn't been barred off by wooden planks. If the filly had gone anywhere, she must have gone upstairs. Fluttershy slowly made her way to the staircase, looking up its length.
It's another trap, I know that.
Testing each step to make sure as she then worked on climbing the stairs with just 3 hooves. She found herself doing surprisingly well. Despite the creaking, the moaning, and the constant threat of collapse, she made it to the top of the stairs. She looked around. To her left was a door that was blocked off by more wooden panels. To her right was... Fluttershy blinked in confusion. The imagery before her seemed to clash with the rest of the house. The flooring right before the door had turned into a red rusted metal, the door also being made of the same material.
What?
The walls seemed to stretch out in a circle around the door, making the walls rotting and falling apart, while just behind the holes in the wall was a chain link fence, as if holding all the walls together. The area seemed to give Fluttershy the sense that it was supposed to be like a cage. Fluttershy gulped before walking slowly to the door.
What's in the cage?
She didn't know what was behind the door, but something told her that she had to look inside, that she had to find out what was in this room. She carefully put a hoof up to the door, took a deep breath of courage, and pushed it open.
Wait a minute, could this be what the doctor was talking about? Or has that already been revealed? I don't know.
The first sound that came to her ears was panting. Loud, exaggerated.
Well, it's Fluttershy
panting.
because we can hear the
Her
panting.
eye focused on the image before her, her sight recognizing 2 different hues of pink in the shape of a pony. It had to be...
Pinkie Pie?
Fluttershy called out to her friend. The panting stopped, as the pink form seemed to freeze right in front of her. It slowly turned, as Pinkie's huge blue eyes came into view, looking straight at Fluttershy. Fluttershy let out an audible gasp.
I would say it's a trap because more than likely something
Pinkie
good
Pie
happens
was
in
covered in
Silent
blood.
Hill. It's just
Her mane
bad.
was straight, and her cheeks were wet with tears that she'd
Oh
been
no.
crying.
Pinkie made a
Fluttershy's
pie.
eyes immediately tried to spot or identify a wound, but she didn't see one. The blood on Pinkie hadn't come from her. It had come from... Fluttershy's eyes moved down to the ground. Laying on the floor in a pool of her
Rainbow
own
Dash.
blood was Pinkie Pie.
What
Though
the...
this Pinkie was different. Her hair was poofy like Pinkie's normally was.
Oh, alter
But
egos.
it was wearing a multicolored leather dress with varying wings on the
God.
back.
This is the Cupcakes reference.
Fluttershy? Pinkie Pie, what happened?
Fluttershy asked in shock disbelief. She could barely make
Is
out
this a
the scene
reference
before
to
her.
Silent Ponyville
Why were
1?
there 2 Pinkie
Because I know
Pies?
Pinkie Pie was
And why was one dead?
it was based around Silent Ponyville 1 was based around Pinkie Pie.
Of course it is, but Pinkie Pie, where are you?
Fluttershy couldn't finish her sentence. The words were refusing to come out.
Fluttershy, why are you so hurt?
Pinkie
I don't
twisted
think that's
her
real
head,
Pinkie Pie. I think
as
that's
if
just a
saying those
monster in
words struck
disguise.
pain into her.
Or this could be a memory, like a lost memory.
Fluttershy asked, confused, before looking down at her hoof in the sling. She was hurt.
I really do think
in
that
that
this is a
moment,
reference to
She
Silent
didn't
Ponyville
care
1
about
though.
that. She cared about
Because
what
I
was
know
happening
that
to
Silent
her
Ponyville
friend.
1 had to do with Pinkie Pie.
Fine, Pinkie Pie, but please, tell me. You're not fine!
Pinkie interrupted her with a yell.
Okay.
Fluttershy took another step back in shock. She had never heard Pinkie yell like that before.
Fluttershy.
Pinkie visibly shook as more tears came from the pink pony. As her blue eyes looked up at her once more.
Your face is swollen and covered in bandages. Your hoof is in a sling, your body's wrapped up, and your wing is in a cast.
Fluttershy was speechless. It was true. She was in very bad condition at the moment. But seeing her pink party-loving, fun-having friend sob and cry while covered in blood didn't feel right to her. She wanted to help Pinkie Pie more than she wanted to help herself.
Pinkie Pie.
Fluttershy mumbled softly, as if trying to find the right words to comfort her friend.
This is all my fault. I shouldn't have let this happen. I should have protected you. I should have been there.
Oh.
I should have known better than to let Twilight do this. Pinkie, you couldn't have possibly known things would happen.
Are my suspicions coming true?
Fluttershy offered her words to Pinkie.
I don't
Pinkie
think this
seemed
is
to
the real
stop
Pinkie
shaking
Pie,
for a
but
moment
is this...
before she began to shake again.
I don't know.
Though this time it was different. Pinkie was laughing. Fluttershy grimaced a little.
She's gone
It
insane.
wasn't a fun-loving laugh. This was the laugh of a mare whose mind was breaking.
Insanity.
I've been through this before. I've done this once before, and I know how horrible this place really is.
Silent Ponyville 1.
Despite that, despite knowing everything I do, I let us get brought here anyway.
Pinkie let out a single laugh
Guilt.
before the smile she was trying to maintain vanished from her face as she hung her head.
Rainbow Dash was right. If I had really cared, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have told you everything that happened when you come here. I wouldn't have tried to hide the truth for the sake of protecting you all from what I experienced. No, I didn't speak up because I was selfish.
She
Because I
kinda
only
got a
cared about
point.
myself, and so I let this hell fall upon you, Fluttershy.
She does have a point.
Fluttershy's mouth fell open
If
as she tried to
Fluttershy
speak.
would, or if
She
they would,
didn't honestly believe any
if
of
Pinkie
Pinkie's
Pie
words,
would have said something
but
about
she
what
couldn't
this
say
place is
anything
really
that would make
like,
her friend not believe
she
him.
would not have
Her
been in
mouth
this
closed as
situation
she
in the
frowned.
first place.
She felt so helpless.
Goes to Cora.
Pinkie's
She always
head
has
slowly
answers.
turned to look at the corpse of herself that was laying on the ground. Something about that body seemed to spark something inside of Pinkie Pie.
But that doesn't mean that I'm gonna just let my friends die.
She stood up, as if she was almost yelling at the dead Pinkie.
I refuse to be the reason that they die. So long as I have strength in my body, I will not let any of my friends fall victim to this world any longer. So long as I have a single breath of air in my body, I will fight this world with everything I have so that they can live.
Pinkie
Alright.
was angry. She was panting heavily as she yelled at the corpse. In this one moment, she had never seen Pinkie go through so many emotions. Emotions that gave Pinkie's words truth behind everything she said. The words were all personal. Words that she had to speak from the heart. Pinkie slowly turned from the corpse, looking at Fluttershy with a glare. Fluttershy flinched. Pinkie's stare softened as she saw the fear she was putting into her friend. Pinkie rubbed her face one more time as she tried to put on a sad but soft smile.
Come on, Fluttershy. Let's get out of here.
Fluttershy could only just softly nod
I'm
as she
confused.
turned around and opened the door back up.
I'm sure it'll
walking
make
out back
sense.
into the abandoned house hallway, slowly followed by Pinkie Pie.
God damn.
What brings you here?
Pinkie asked quietly, not looking directly at Fluttershy, but at the hallway before them.
Well, I found my way back to Ponyville after getting separated, and then I saw a filly run into this house. I was looking for that filly when I found you. So you saw a filly run in here?
Fluttershy nodded her head.
Exactly.
Did you find her yet?
Fluttershy shook her head.
Then we should try and find her. If there's one thing I've come to realize, things don't happen without a reason.
Pinkie said as she began to walk further down the hallway of the second floor. Fluttershy slowly followed after Pinkie Pie. There was silence between the two mares. Fluttershy wanted to speak up. She wanted to say something, but the words only got caught in her throat. She felt like Pinkie Pie was portraying herself as a monster, but she knew Pinkie Pie wasn't a monster. She was a caring friend who, more than anything, loved her friends. Pinkie checked the door, only to find it locked.
Oh,
She seemed
shit.
to scrunch her face at the door, before letting it go and continuing on, leading the way. Fluttershy watched Pinkie as she moved. She seemed to scrutinize small details, looking at her surroundings with intensity. She looked like she didn't want to miss a single detail of anything in the house. She seemed determined, focused.
That's basically how it is in the game. You have to look at every single detail in order to pass, like, the game. Oh shit.
Perked up as her heart suddenly dropped.
Oh no.
She could hear it. She could hear the siren blaring
That is
in
a
the distance.
fucking creepy siren.
Pinkie Pie, do you hear that? Hear what? You don't hear it?
That is creepy.
Then maybe it's my imagination.
Fluttershy, don't ever assume anything here is your imagination. Tell
Exactly,
me what
it's
you're
focused
hearing.
around her.
I hear a siren.
Pinkie's pupils
It's
shrunk,
focused
as if on
around.
instinct.
Fluttershy, stay very close to me. Don't leave my side, alright?
She's
Fluttershy
the main
nodded her head
focus of the
softly
Silent
as Pinkie
Ponyville
turned
puzzle,
around before
so
continuing
therefore
down the
she can
hallway.
only hear the things
the
that
end
Pinkie
of the
Pie
hallway,
can't.
They came to another door.
I don't know if that made any sense,
Pinkie
but
put a hoof
eh.
up to it, and the door swung open.
Oh shit.
Inside the room was a surprise. The shape of it was very well taken care of.
Uh-oh.
There was new beige carpets with white walls.
I have a feeling
around the
this is
room.
another memory.
The room seemed to be fairly lit well. On one side of the room, there was a giant mirror that seemed to encompass the whole wall. Pinkie entered the room first, scrutinizing it carefully. She didn't see anything out of the ordinary in this room. There was a small bed in the corner and a desk with drawers. On one of the walls next to the window was another door, looking similar to a closet. Pinkie walked over to the desk and examined it, seeming to be looking for something, opening each of the drawers for a clue or answer. Fluttershy slowly walked into the room as she turned her lantern off. She'd been expecting scenery similar to the kind that she had seen in the hospital. Everything drenched with water, rotting and falling apart. But this room was remarkably serene. Something about it gave her a sense of calm.
Nothing.
Pinkie muttered, staring at the desk confused. She then turned her attention to the closet door and walked over to it. She opened the door and saw a small walk-in closet that was lined with some clothes and boxes.
Check
She
the
stepped
clothes.
inside to investigate for clues. Fluttershy sat down.
The siren
looking
isn't
at
a
herself in the
good
mirror.
sign, so I have a feeling
She
we're going to
really
see
did
something
look a
bad
mess.
here any
She managed to
second.
avoid getting most of her hair in the bandages, so it was helping to hide the bandaged side of her face. But she still couldn't believe just how much damage she had taken from her encounter in the hospital.
You'll be okay.
Fluttershy said to herself, raising a hoof to touch the mirror.
Oh Jesus.
The mirror began to become translucent as Fluttershy let out a shocked gasp. On the other side of the mirror, in the room similar to the one she was in, sat Rainbow Dash.
Aha!
Staring at the mirror.
This is an Origins thing.
Oh, Dash?
Fluttershy cried out, pressing her hoof harder against the mirror.
Rainbow Dash?
Pinkie cried out from inside the closet.
What the
When she
hell?
moved to exit the closet, the
Jesus
door slammed
Christ.
shut on her face. She stared in shock at the door as she tried to force it open, but it was locked tight.
No! No, you let me out right now!
Pinkie yelled as she banged on
Uh-oh.
the door. She banged so hard that she could feel the pain beginning to soar through her hooves.
That's what she
Fluttershy
said.
couldn't believe that Rainbow Dash was on the other side of the mirror. She tried to bang her hoof against the mirror, but Rainbow Dash didn't seem to hear her. Rainbow Dash was just staring blankly at her from the other room opposite the mirror.
Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash! Rainbow Dash!
Don't fall
Fluttershy
for it.
cried out desperately, trying to get her mere friend's attention. She banged against the mirror as hard as she could, her
She
hooves
can't
beginning to
hear
bruise
you.
with each strike. But Rainbow Dash just sat there, looking confused at the mirror before her.
What the
Suddenly, the lights dimmed.
Uh-oh.
Fluttershy gasped
Not
as the
good.
light grew dimmer, her hoof quickly moving to her lantern to turn it on. The bright light blinded her as it reflected off of the mirror, as she
This
was no
is
longer able
not
to see through it
good.
or Rainbow Dash with the light on. She quickly turned the light back off, looking back into Rainbow's room. The door on the back of Rainbow's room opened, though Rainbow
What?
still didn't move. The darkness was creeping into the room from the open door, washing in as if it was a mist. Fluttershy's heart sank. From the doorway flared a pair of familiar red eyes. Fluttershy banged on the mirror again and again, crying as loud as she
Not good.
could.
Even though this is just an illusion. This is just
The
an
dark
illusion.
creature opened its mouth.
Probably.
As it slowly walked closer to the sitting Rainbow Dash.
Uh-oh.
Rainbow didn't move. She only seemed to tilt her head in confusion, looking at the mirror still.
No! Please! No! Stop! Please!
It's all an illusion.
Fluttershy begged as tears began to stream down her face. Her hoof starting to hurt from how hard she was banging on the window.
That's all
The dark
she
creature stood
is seeing.
right
Is just an
behind
illusion.
Rainbow Dash, its white mouth grinning at her as her heart stopped beating. She looked right up into its face. The
Uh-oh.
dark creature opened its mouth into an even greater grin. Fluttershy's heart sank further into her gut. The dark creature raised its mouth higher. Then it
Until...
brought its mouth down hard on top of Rainbow Dash. The light turned
Oh
bright,
my god.
forcing Fluttershy to shield her eyes from the sudden change. She adjusted her eyes as best as she could as she looked up at the mirror. A sad, soft music box lullaby began to play as images started to dance across the mirror.
Don't worry, Ashley. I'll fix you up.
The image was of a crying, very young Filly Fluttershy. Her pony doll had
Another
been torn
memory.
to pieces.
I called
The
it.
stuffing
I
spread all
called
around
it.
her. The filly was very carefully pushing the stuffing back inside the torn-up doll before taking a threaded needle and started to very slowly, very shakily, sew the torn pieces back together.
Is that...
A splatter of blood struck the window,
What the
making the image
fudge?
turn red before the image changed again.
Mother?
Another
Filly Fluttershy
memory?
called out softly to her mother who was lying in her bed. The older mare's head seemed to almost snap, as if looking in anger at the child. Fluttershy shook at the sight, never having seen her mother look so angry at her before.
It's all an
But the look
illusion.
of the older mare soon softened. As she looked at her child, she was tired.
What is it, my child?
She asked.
That's Gina
though
M.
Exhaustion was apparent in her voice.
Dad wanted me to see if you wanted anything to eat.
Huh. Food to eat.
Her mother said with sarcastic bitterness, turning her head to look out the window of her room.
What's the point of eating? It burns my throat and makes me sick.
But you need it, Mother.
Oh, I do. Do I?
The older mare glared angrily at her daughter. Another splatter of blood struck the window, causing the image to change to red once more, before the image melted into the next.
Negative memory? Oh,
A
hello.
loud smack rang out as Filly Fluttershy tumbled from her sitting position on the table. Tears sprang from the edges of her eyes as she looked up at what had just struck her. The nurse pony was glaring at her.
Ooh.
Now tell me again, how did you break your wing?
She snapped at the little filly who was crying.
Is that where a cattail?
Fluttershy gulped as she tried to
I think it
breathe.
is.
Oh,
Where a cloudtail, my bad.
That's right.
The nurse said as she walked over to Fluttershy.
Oh, there, that is Scribbler. I don't
sitting
know.
her back down.
We'll find out in the
Were you
credits.
trying to fly, you silly filly? You need to be much more careful when you try flying. It can be very dangerous to fly.
The
I
nurse
think
nodded
that
her
is where a
head slowly.
cloudtail, though.
Now, let's freshen that cast.
Filly Fluttershy could only
God,
cry
this
once more.
nurse is a
The cast
bitch.
on her wings seemed to dig into her skin.
Oh, dear
A
God.
splatter of blood struck the window.
So,
Images turned dark. The mirror seemed to turn into a fire of darkness,
okay, so
mirror
this
burned
is
up
like
completely,
negative memories.
disappearing without a trace.
Bad memories.
Fluttershy sat down in the dark, tears streaming from her eyes. She was sitting in the pitch-dark room now, unable to see anything. She carefully moved her hoof up to the lantern before hesitantly turning it on. The light lit up the room before her. The blood stained the carpet and the walls, but there was no sign of Rainbow Dash or the dark creature now. The smell
about
of
Pinkie
blood
Pie?
and mildew struck her necks. as she could hear the dripping of water all around her.
Uh-oh.
The room was now rotting.
Aha, aha.
She had returned to that world, the world separate from Ponyville. She had returned to the other world.
That's not
She
good.
very slowly stood up.
Yeah, it's like an
lifting her
origins
hooves over
thing
the wall
because
where
the mirrors
mirror
are
used
like
to exist.
portals to
She
the
carefully
negative
walked
world.
around the bloodstain
The
that
bad
was
world.
all over the floor. She couldn't see a single remnant that told her Rainbow Dash had been there. Only the bloodstains that scoured the room.
What am I
She
talking
hiccuped before
about?
gulping,
Both worlds are
praying
bad.
that Rainbow hadn't just been killed before her eyes. But without a body there, she prayed that she would still be alive. Fluttershy slowly walked to the door in Rainbow's room and saw something written in blood on the door.
Deep within, there are secrets laid to rest. But we cannot hide forever from the sins of her past. What once was lost will now be found. Blood-stained hoofs will rise once more.
Fluttershy couldn't help but realize
Bad memories.
the words were meant
The
for
bad
her.
memories.
But the images that she had just seen were only the beginning. When she stepped through that door, she was going to learn exactly what those images meant. With a deep breath and gulping down the beating heart in her throat, she opened the door and walked inside.
God, that noise. Alright, let's see who played who. Okay. Did I get it right? I had it correct on one of them. It was Scribbler who was playing the mean nurse. Goody plays the monster. I know that. God. Alright. That was actually a really excellent, that was really excellent. But I've got to say it doesn't beat, Chapter 4, because Chapter 4 just had that vibe that just makes you go, what the F? And it really impacted me, as you guys saw in the last reaction. This one was actually pretty interesting. So now she's seeing the bad memories, so this is just like the beginning. I actually looked up the actual story, and it is pretty dang long, so I have no idea how longer this has got to go. But I'm not going to say that chapter didn't scare me, because it did. It made me jump a few times, but the concept of it is just really awesome. Just a great story altogether. I mean, there's really nothing bad I could say about this story, except that was one of the more milder chapters. I'll say that. I don't know if that was the real Pinkie Pie she actually caught or found, but I do know the Pinkie Pie part was actually a reference to Silent Ponyville 1. I don't know what kind of reference it represents, because I have not read Silent Ponyville 1 nor seen it. But altogether, that was a great chapter. It still doesn't beat Chapter 4, though. Chapter 4 is the best so far. So, yeah, I can't wait for Chapter 6. This is a really interesting story. Much different than others that I've listened to and all that stuff. And look forward to some stuff coming in October, guys, because that's going to be fun. So, anyways, until next time, that's all for now. Like, comment, subscribe for more, and Sparrow for now. Bro.